Yeah, 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 yeah.
My name is Evan. The presentation is the practice of change. And the orientation here is that there's a lot of talk about change and changing the world. And I've been involved in a number of different communities and organizations that are really focused on this. The Hub in San Francisco, which is a community of mission-driven entrepreneurs. SoCap, which is social capital market. So it's impact investing, social entrepreneurship in that space. And what I've seen is that we don't go out and wake up in the day and say we're going to go change the world. It's a practice. It's something that we learn and get better at. And we need methodology for. We need to have an understanding of how to do that and how to be effective. In addition to my role in the default world, I also help with a number of wonderful people to put together Camp Ideate. And Ideate is focus, the underpinning is really the exploration of Burning Man culture in the world and what does that mean. I think a lot of people are engaged in that exploration right now. I think it's really interesting, so I'm going to try to tie a couple of those concepts together through the presentation. Oh, that text is different font. All right. So fundamentally, societal change is an evolution of culture. So lasting change, something that's really going to work and stick. It's an evolution of values and mindset. It's not going out and just the interventions. It's fundamentally changing who we are, how we engage with people. All the issues in the world, whether it's climate change, social justice, they're all a challenge of mindset. And that how we relate to ourselves and other people manifests in the world in particular ways and create the surroundings that we experience. And so if we're not approaching mindset as well as structure, whether it's business structure, organizational structure, if we're not approaching those simultaneously, we're not going at it as holistically as we possibly could. Collectively, as a society, we have a number of addictions to particular worldviews. So frames of reference, ways of being, ways of thinking, which are not fundamentally grounded in truth. They're not actually real, but we all collectively buy into them and engage with them and participate in it. And for a paradigm shift, for a phase change, as the previous speaker said, we have to understand and get past these addictions. And there's a number of them, and I've pulled out a few to speak about. One of them, which is one of the most egregious things I believe that's happened to society, is the bifurcation of nonprofit and for-profit. So on one side, you have do good, and on the other side, you have maximize shareholder value. And this creates perverse incentive structures. Right? If you are, no, please go back. If you are, for example, working for a nonprofit and you're making considerable amounts of money, you're vilified because you're supposed to be doing good. Where on the for-profit side, if you're making lots of money, despite the repercussions of those actions, it's still celebrated. There's also the structure is off where that in the nonprofits, there's a lot of fragmented organizations all competing for the same sources of funding, not working together as effectively as they could. And the for-profit side, you're having conglomerates and large organizations that are purchasing and growing, and it creates a false dynamic. And that what all organizations, every single one of them, should actually be doing is looking at and saying, how are we creating societal value? Right? Which is much more complicated. Measuring money is very, very easy. You can write it down, you can figure it out. It's very easy to gauge success if you're measuring money. It's very difficult to figure out how are we creating societal value. And that necessitates an understanding of all of us coming together and saying, well, what is it that we actually value? What is it that we together are going to invest in, put our time to, put our resources towards? And that the financial sector as a leverage point within that, because finance impacts everything else. It impacts politics, it impacts business, it impacts every other direction. It's one of those leverage points. And how are we investing in our companies? How are we allocating money in a way that's really looking at how are we creating societal value? And there's an emergence of this, whether it's benefit corporations and B Corps and social enterprises, they're still exploring this, but it's very nascent. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Another one of the societal addictions of worldview is around brands. I really like that Burning Man is devoid of brands because brands are social constructs. They don't exist. You sit here and you say, all right, I'm going to create a brand. It's a personal brand or it's a company brand, and it exists over here. You just made it out of nowhere, which there's a strong utility to that. It's effective. What happens is people create egoic identifications with their own brand or with brands that they identify with. So they say it becomes an extension of yourself. And the trick with that is that it doesn't allow us to really work together to understand what are we collectively trying to accomplish. And instead, we're more focused on how are we building up our own brands, and it's a much more focused on sort of our own, it's an extension of our ego, and it's, I think, something that's subtle but insidious within society. Another one of the societal addictions is this notion of interdependence and independence. Spiritual traditions teach us that we are all interdependent, that we exist in unity. And it's difficult to access that from a visceral experience. We can say that, I can say that, but how are we actually experiencing that on a day-to-day basis? And nowadays, we sort of have that balance. That's a heavy sort of mimetic structure. And there's also independence, focused on yourself, your career, the hero's journey. And that's fine. It's totally valid to do that. But there's this balance between taking care of yourself and supporting and bringing up your own individual, as well as understanding and engaging with the collective in a more holistic fashion. And finally, in terms of the societal addictions, what I have to point out is there's a difference between values and structure. And often those things are equated. They're slammed together. So a structure, for example, would be like a capitalism or a market or libertarianism. Those are structures. But they're only based on the values of the people that engage with those structures. I think this is falling off. Okay, thank you. It's on upside down. I'm going to go with it. Burning Man. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
And then you have a pack.
Hello? I can also just yell. That's probably not the best.
Where'd Dex go? All right.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
There you go.
All right. So, thank you. Structures and value. The example I was going to point out is, for example, trickle-down economics, which is a structure. And in theory, that could work if the values of the people that were engaged with that structure was such that they would reinvest in the communities, create jobs, all that stuff. If they hoard money, if they put it overseas, if they invest solely in things that are not job creating, then it doesn't work. It's not the structure that breaks down, it's the values of the people that engage with it. We have to have a much more effective and conversation around values and exploration for these structures to really make place. So once again, fundamental change is an evolution of culture, and Burning Man represents an evolution of culture and an evolution of values and mindset. The closest structure some of these values are around demodification, non-brandedness, and this balance between self-reliance and interdependence. I think that's one of the pieces that for me is the most profound, is that you are taking care of yourself while also constantly contributing. From a structural perspective, the man is a libertarian. It's sort of a duocracy, but the closest thing is the libertarian. High focus on personal freedoms, no government. The reason it works is because of the values of the people that engage with it, because they have that balance of self-reliance while also participation and contribution. So this notion of Burning Man culture in the world, it's not how do we take Burning Man, so to speak, is how are we taking those values, those things that we come here and we experience, and living them more on a day-to-day basis and applying that as a practice of change. In the real world, this is my house, this is my dinner, this is my car, and they're not yours. And here we're having a new type of civic participation, one that's focused on inclusion, participation, self-reliance, and a civic responsibility that is unique and independent. And it's sort of forming a new form of citizen engagement. And it creates an evolution of culture, one that's focused on creativity, being in the present moment, sustainability, entrepreneurship, that type of creative capacity that's emergent and arises from all of us. So I know a lot of these concepts can be fairly high level, so I wanted to try to at least give a few things that you could take away, even if they're not terribly descriptive, for how to engage with this on a day-to-day basis. One is to reframe your relationship between money and societal value and really understand how you're using your money, how it's going. Money is inherently neutral. It has no value except for the people that put it, or there's no context to it except how it's being directed and the values of people that put it towards it. If they're putting it towards doing good, it will do good. If they're putting it towards something that's not good, it will do exactly that. So how are we using our money? How are we investing? And how are we building organizations that fundamentally create societal value? Another is let go of egoic attachments to brands. It's the dissolution of ego in general. Realize that these brands aren't actually existing, and what we're fundamentally trying to do is collectively create something that's more than the individual parts. Explore your personal values and relate them to every part of your life. This is sort of the practice. This is the yoga of it. It's that find out what your values are and analyze, reflect. Are we living them at every single moment in your jobs, in your career, and stay as much as you can unyielding to align your values that you care about with your actions, and there you will be participating and you will be showing up and making the world a better place. Thank you.